Hi, I'm Sonya White Jaguar. Welcome to this edition of White Jaguar Wednesdays, my semi-monthly series where I discuss spiritual subjects inspired by your questions. I received a question asking for help to release fear of contacting loved ones on the other side. This is going to be part one of a two-part series where I answer that question. What I'd like to do today in part one is to discuss some reasons and benefits for contacting our loved ones on the other side. And then in part two, I'd like to give you the opportunity to release any fear by sharing an exercise with you, and then also give you the opportunity to talk with a loved one on the other side in a guided meditation. So first of all, let me share with you some examples of contact that I've had, and so that you can understand some of the reasons and benefits why you would want to contact loved ones on the other side. When we understand the reasons for doing things, that sometimes in and of itself can help us to release any fear or resistance to doing something. And so what I would start off with first of all is that I have had a lot of contact with loved ones, family members and friends since I've been doing spiritual healing work. My awareness of the other side opened up naturally over the years as I was doing healing work. So that helped me to release my fear and concern, even just as far as like, am I imagining this? You know, am I making this up? And because that's very important too, you know, to have that kind of confirmation. So the more that you practice and the more that you do it, you'll gain that confidence, you know, also. So just recently, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I had a very intense visit from my father in a meditation. He died about 12 years ago, and he has been working with me since he died. And this particular meditation, though, took my relationship with him to a very different level. It was like high def. I was sitting in a scene in nature, and I was in a forest, and I could literally smell the trees. I could hear the leaves rustling, and there was a beautiful cascading waterfall around me, and I could hear the crashing of the waves. It was so loud. And my father came to me in the midst of that scene. And interestingly, he didn't appear the way that he looked in this life as my father. He appeared to me as a Chinese monk. This was a past life that we had had together. He had never appeared to me in this form before. And he wanted to teach me about this life. And he told me that this was in the early 20th century, on the southern border of China with Tibet. And so he said that we were biological brothers, and we had worked together as monks in this monastery. And so he took me to the monastery. It was a beautiful building, and he explained that in that life we would write poetry, and we actually would paint murals on the wall and then write the poems on the wall. It was beautiful. And he explained that he was the elder brother, and he said that when he got sick toward the end of his life, I took care of him. And he always remembered that. And so then when we incarnated together in this life as father and daughter, we repeated that pattern. I took care of him at the end of his life. He died of cancer. Both of my parents died of cancer. And so I took care of him at the end of this life too. So he taught me a great deal. He taught me how we work together in groups and we reincarnate together, and that we do have a relationship that transcends one lifetime, that we will repeat patterns. And it was incredible. So not only did he teach me about my relationship with him, you know, as from soul to soul working together, but he also taught me about this time in history. I certainly didn't know anything about, you know, monasteries on the border between China and Tibet. This was, of course, before China invaded Tibet. So it just shows you how much information that you can glean from contact with someone on the other side like that. And you can see the eternality, of the soul. And it can be very healing. I'll share another story with you too. I taught Reiki for 5 years and to more than 100 students. And so I saw many transformative experiences happening to the students. Now, Reiki is the ability to activate Reiki happens in a short guided meditation. It's a sacred initiation called an attunement. And what happens literally is you are tuned, just like tuning a radio dial to a particular frequency. You are tuned to the frequency of Reiki so that you can then channel Reiki through you. And during that experience, anything can happen. People have all kinds of spiritual experiences. Sometimes loved ones and spirit guides do come and share messages. Sometimes the student will just simply feel the Reiki energy activating in them. And sometimes they feel nothing at all. We can't guarantee, of course, that you're going to have a spiritual experience during that meditation. But I've seen enough over the years to know that it's real. Something is definitely happening. And I remember during one of the classes, one of the students had a visit from her father. After the meditation, she was in tears. We knew that something had happened. And so she shared her experience with us. She explained how her father came to her and talked to her. And she said that he had died some years before, and he was raised in a particular religious tradition that did not believe in cremation. He wanted to be buried after he died. Now, she went against his wishes and had him cremated. And so then for years, she carried this guilt inside her for doing that. So when he appeared to her during her Reiki attunement, he told her that he forgave her for doing that it didn't matter, it was fine, that she had him cremated instead. So that freed her from her guilt that she had. So that's another reason, very compelling reason, I think, to make contact with our loved ones, because they can help us with closure and healing when we're carrying something negative, something that is unresolved, that we need to release. And again, I've had contact with other people too, friends that have passed away and given me messages. And I had a friend recently who was a spiritual healer, an ordained minister, and who taught spiritual teachings. And he came to me and has done some healing work with me since his passing. So it's really incredible what you can do with people after they pass. It really starts with your awareness and your knowing that we are eternal beings, and we can continue to stay in touch and continue our relationships after we pass away, because it's only the body, the physical body, that we release at death. We take with us our emotions and our memories. We still care about the people here. So all we have to do is work at developing that relationship and keeping it going. Now, what I'd like to do next is share with you some books that you might enjoy reading. I'm an avid reader, and I recommend staying up with what's going on in the spiritual community, because so much has been written on these subjects to help us, to release any fear or any concerns, and to help us understand a little bit better what's going on. Because the foundation of it all, understanding that we can communicate like this across dimensions, is understanding that we're all connected. And so what I'd like to do is just briefly share with you some books that you might want to consider reading. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just some books that I have in my library that helped me. These helped me to let go of my fear and any concerns that I had. So the first one that I'll share with you is by Dr. Larry Dossey. He's been around now for many years. This book came out about 10 years ago, One Mind: How Our Individual Mind is Part of a Greater Consciousness and Why It Matters. It's a wonderful summary of basically those principles. You know, the fact that we're all connected, we're all part of one mind. If you have done a lot of spiritual reading, this will read like a summary and a reminder, you know, of these truths. If you're brand new to spiritual literature, this could be very, very transformative. He's a great writer, and he's written many books. I definitely recommend him. Another teacher that I have studied with, and I've read all of his books, and I love his work, Dr. Eben Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon. His first book was Proof of Heaven, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife, and this is his third book, Living in a Mindful Universe, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Heart of Consciousness. Wonderful books. In Proof of Heaven, he talks about his near-death experience that he had. He was in a coma for 6 days when he had meningitis. And while he was on the other side, he had contact with a sister who he did not know while he was living. He was adopted in this lifetime. And so the sister was a biological sister that he did not know. And she gave him a very healing message while he was on the other side. So I recommend all of Dr. Alexander's books. They're really outstanding. To me, he's on the cutting edge of modern spiritual understanding. So his work will definitely help you release any fear that you have. And another author who's wonderful in a similar vein with a near-death experience that was very transformative is Anita Moorjani. She just came here to Las Vegas and did a brief talk, and it was outstanding. It was the first time she'd ever come here, so it was my first time getting to hear her speak, and it was wonderful. If you ever have the opportunity to hear her speak, I definitely recommend it. A shout out to those of you at the Reiki Center who recommended her talk. A group of us from the Reiki Center went that day to hear her. It was great. This was her first book, Dying to Be Me, My Journey from Cancer to Near Death to True Healing. And I love the quote at the bottom. She said, "I had the choice to come back or not. I chose to return when I realized that heaven is a state, not a place." And that again is another key message, I think, and something to help us overcome our fear. Remember that heaven is right here. It's a state of awareness. It's a state of mind. And that's why we can reach out to anyone on the other side, because they're right here. They're not in a different place. They're in a different state. That's all. While she was on the other side, she had contact with her father and her best friend. Her father had died 10 years before, and her best friend had died 3 years before of cancer, and they gave her a very healing message too. They told her that she could come back and to live her life fearlessly. Imagine that. So there's that message again, to let go of fear. Everyone I know who has read her book has had a tremendous experience. I read this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I wished I had read it sooner. I had heard of it before, and it just took me a while to get around to it because I just had so many books to read, but I wished I had read it sooner. Absolutely transformative book. And she's written some other books too. I recommend all of her books. And then lastly, I wanted to mention a hypnotherapist. These books are classics. I probably read these about 20 years ago. I recommend them all the time. Michael Newton, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. He had regressed thousands of clients, and while they were under hypnosis, he asked them questions about the other side. And so they explained what happens after death, the journey that the soul goes through, and how we work together in groups, the relationships that we have with other souls, how we choose our lives, and how we reincarnate. They're very freeing books. I definitely recommend these also to help you with releasing fear. Journey of Souls was the first one, so I would recommend starting with this one, and then if you really like this one and want to continue, then read Destiny of Souls. So anyway, that's what I'd like to leave you with as far as research that you can do. And then what I'd also like to do is give you a little homework assignment. Take out a piece of paper and then just write across the top why I have fear of contacting loved ones on the other side. And then sit with that for a little bit And you might not need to write much, maybe just a word or a phrase or one sentence, but you might feel inspired to write a paragraph or write a page and see what comes up, because when we put our thoughts down on paper, that can be very freeing for us, and we give our subconscious that space to express itself. So some things might come up. So give yourself some time to work with that. And then join me for part 2 of this series, and I'll give you an exercise to help you release that fear. And I'll also give you the opportunity to talk with a loved one on the other side and see if you get a message, from someone. So with that, in the meantime, please, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below or email me at sonya@sonyawhitejaguar.com. If you've read some other spiritual books that you really love and think would help viewers, please feel free to leave that in the comments below too. Leave some suggestions of other books people might want to read. And again, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can also subscribe to my newsletter on my website, SONYA'S.com. And again, I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you'll join me for part 2.